Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Joanne Smedley, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Flying Officer Barack Finney. We warmly welcome the family of Private Arthur Charles Gustav Rathmann, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in the singing of the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Arthur Charles Gustav Rathmann. Arthur Rathmann was born on the 15th of January 1896 in Caloot, a town on the bank of the Murray River in South Australia. He was the descendant of German migrants who settled in South Australia in the mid-1800s. His parents, Franz and Johanna, raised a large family of children before becoming estranged in 1908. Arthur Rathmann was working as a farm labourer when Australia entered the First World War. He enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 22nd of January 1915 at the age of 19 and was allotted to the 27th Battalion. After initial training, the 27th Battalion left Australia in June and after 2 months of training in Egypt, landed at Gallipoli in mid-September. Rathmann, however, came down with a case of measles in June and wasn't able to join his battalion until late October. The 27th Battalion was reinforcing the weary New Zealand and Australian Division defending Cheshire Ridge and had a relatively quiet time at Gallipoli, suffering minimal casualties. Regardless, the combination of poor nutrition, unsanitary living conditions, and lack of rest took its toll on Private Rathmann. In late November, he was admitted to a field ambulance and then transferred to a casualty clearing station suffering from jaundice, dysentery, and fever. He was sent to St. Patrick's Hospital on Malta, where his condition was described as still being anemic and weak, and then transferred to Alexandria. It wasn't until February 1916 that Rathmann's health had improved sufficiently for him to return to duty. By this time, the AIF had withdrawn from the disastrous Gallipoli campaign and returned to Egypt. While the troops had a period of rest and retraining, the AIF was expanded and reorganized, effectively doubling in size. As part of this restructuring, Rathmann was transferred to the newly established 2nd Pioneer Battalion. Pioneer battalions perform construction tasks in the forward area, such as constructing trenches and dugouts, and occasionally acted in the engineering roles on tasks such as construction of bridges. However, they were trained and organized as infantry battalions and occasionally served as frontline infantry. Assigned to the 2nd Division, the 2nd Pioneer Battalion deployed to the Western Front and fought in most of the major battles involving the AIF between mid-1916 and the end of the war. Despite suffering heavy losses at Pozières, the battalion took part in the fighting at Mouquet Farm in July and August 1916. The following year, the Germans withdrew to the heavily fortified defences of the Hindenburg Line, and the pioneers were committed to attacking these defences as part of the Allied efforts to follow up the German retreat. This saw Rathmann taking part in fighting at Bullecourt in May and around Ypres later in the year. On the 2nd of September 1917, Private Rathmann was recorded as being absent from tattoo roll call at the end of the day and forfeited 2 days penalty as a penalty. A little over a fortnight later, on the 18th of September 1917, Rathmann was wounded in action, receiving a shell wound that penetrated his back and damaged his abdomen. His wound was mortal, and he died shortly afterwards at the 3rd Field Ambulance. He was 21 years old. He is buried at the Menin Road South Military Cemetery near Ypres. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Arthur Charles Gustav Rathmann, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.